Coming up on the Payoff, Brendan Walsh has run the gamut in life, from the Marines to runs on Broadway. You might have even seen him in shows like The Blacklist. He finished up a stint in Tokyo where he was performing West Side Story right before the pandemic. But it's his performance as a functioning person while he was a complete drunk and lunatic that he and I talked about. We also discussed the magic on the other side of that madness and meeting up in Hoboken, New Jersey, he and I am talking about, almost 10 years ago. Brendan is an actor, but he's very real when he informs, entertains, and inspires talking about sobriety. But first, this guy's putting a new album out soon. Hopefully he'll let us use some of his music. Kevin Souza.
Stand by the ocean floor.
I can call him? All right, cool.
I'll get levels as you call.
Okay, cool.
Oh, baby.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Look at you. You
How
sound...
are you? Are we recording? Are we recording?
We'll use what we can from this early portion of our chat. Where are you now? Are you home?
Yeah, I'm home. I didn't know if we were I knew that it wasn't video, but I was wondering if we were going to FaceTime, you know?
I make it as simple as possible.
Yeah, I like to look at your face.
Yeah, I don't, though.
Whatever. I don't, whatever.
It's like when I have to look, it's like one of those things. I think Zoom has done this to a lot of us. Now, we're all not as handsome as you. For people that don't know, we're talking to Brendan's an actor here. So I
don't think I'm as handsome as you're making me sound, and that is definitely true. But I can tell you that from doing a little research on your podcast, you have some serious people on this. I'm honored.
Yeah, well,
dude,
dude,
I even got asked. I mean, it was worth hitting bottom just to be on this podcast and with the other people that you interviewed.
Well, I wanted to dip into, a big part of my sobriety. And by the way, we're talking to Brendan. But a big thing about my sobriety.
Yeah, we kind of jumped right in. I'm sorry. I really didn't know if we were, whatever.
No, dude, that's cool. I kind of like keeping it organic, but yeah, we flow right into it.
Good.
One of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because I wanted to kind of flex that Hoboken muscle. And that was a huge part of my sobriety. You were one of my favorite guys in that group. And I was lucky, and this is how service works in the 12-step program. I was I guess summer, you gave me a call. We hadn't caught up in a while. Of course, everything was going crazy with the pandemic. And you gave me an opportunity to share Zoom on a meeting in Hoboken for the new meeting, the Brown Baggers, which was awesome.
It was great. Yeah, it was really great. Thanks for, you stepped up to the plate right away. I think I gave you like a week's notice.
Yeah, you gave me plenty of time, dude. Yeah, I was honored. I told everybody on the meeting, I said, my dream is to get back to New York. I said, I didn't know I'd be doing it on a Zoom, on a Zoom AA meeting, but I'll take what I can get.
It actually reminds me that it was, it was very early. This is, and we'll get to it, maybe not, but this is my second time around. And early on in my sobriety this time, you had actually, what started this friendship was that you had actually reached out to me. Outside of the room, because we got along inside, but you had actually reached out to me and said, can we grab lunch? And I was like, yeah, that would be awesome. And we were talking, and you said one of the reasons you wanted to ask me out to lunch was because I had 3 years sober from 2004 to 2007, and you wanted to know what happened so you didn't make the same mistake. And I think that was the first time in my own sobriety that, like, my story or whatever happened had an opportunity to maybe prevent another person from going out, which is great. But it also was a real eye-opener, to my own, for my own life and the program too, and AA. So that started, this friendship, and it's almost been, it's 9 years this year.
Yeah, 9 years. Let's go back. Give me your sobriety date.
December 15th of I guess it would be 2013, right? If this isn't December, will be 9 years.
Yeah.
So is that right? That math check out?
I mean, you're asking the wrong guy. I'm over here counting on thumbs, but yeah, that sounds right.
2013 or 2012, 2012. Yeah, 2012.
It was 2012.
Yeah.
I remember. I have a great memory with dates. It was definitely 2012.
I get mixed up because it was the turn of the year, and so because one, I was also really messed up, and so 2012 became 2013. But December 15th is for sure.
One of my first things about you when you came back, I've been around for a little bit, for a little over a year, and you were like very happy about being sober. It was almost as though you had kind of made it back home. Like you were.
Oh, with AA has always. I mean, I remember my first time, and I mean, I broke down in my first meeting in the Berkshires, Massachusetts, 2004, June 4th, 2004, and I was in that meeting and I broke down, but I felt home. I really felt like, halfway through that meeting, listening to these guys' stories, I was like, wow, this is whatever this is. And I didn't know anything about AA. And I just, and so I was out for 5 years. I had a 5-year relapse. Yeah, so it was 2007 to 2012. I'm glad we cleared that up.
While we're on it right now, what was the main thing that led to the relapse? Because we're about to go backwards. But what was? How did you end up relapsing?
Yeah, so I act. I've been in theater for most of my life, and I had booked my first New York show, and I thought I had arrived. I thought I was young, right? I got sober at 2000. I was 24, so I thought maybe I was just young. I didn't understand really the nature of the disease. I knew I drank a lot, and I had a life that supported that drinking, as far as like just lifestyle, the military and theater and restaurants and working in restaurants. And I thought that, I was just young, and now I was going to be really successful. And this show was not by any means a Broadway caliber show, as far as what it was, like an off Broadway thing, but it was New York, and I was going to be discovered, and that was that. And there was this beautiful woman in the show, and they were going out having drinks after rehearsals and that, and she liked bourbon and I liked her, and I didn't really have the nerve to talk to her outside of the theater without the drink, I thought. And I picked up, and to be honest too, I'll say that for 3 months it was awesome. In my when it was like things were going really well. I was making money, I was drinking, I was having a good time, I was meeting a lot of people, and I thought things were going great, and I was having a good time. I mean, and then the rug got pulled out, and things really spiraled down, and just kept going down and down and down. So.
Are drugs a part of your story?
Yeah, I like they are, in the sense that if I was doing drugs, they were yours. I would steal your drugs and help you look for them. Like I would take a bag of coke if it was lying around. And the only reason I wanted it, it's funny because I was actually just talking about this yesterday. So I just wanted the coke to sober up, to drink more. I mean, I would be as drunk as I could possibly be, and I would want the cocaine just to sober up, so I could get back to the exact point that I was at, so I could keep drinking. And so that's why I started doing coke. Yeah, it was more that, the second time in, because the first time, all my drinking, a lot of that was in the military. And so, I couldn't pop on a drug test. I didn't want to lose all my benefits or get dishonorably discharged or really risk that. And I just really wanted to drink anyway. But when I started working in restaurants and then, all-nighters and day binges and everything else, drugs became a part of my story.
All right, let's go backwards. The first time that you had a drink or a drug or a mind-altering substance?
So the one that I remember, and I think it was the first time, I think I was 10, and my parents were getting divorced. My father was out of the house, and he was the disciplinarian. I think my mother had a lot of guilt, and I have an older sister. She's 6.5 years older, and she threw a party. And so there were all these high school kids over, and I had a red wagon in the garage, and they filled that up with ice and put a keg in there. And I remember these two guys behind the keg, and they were awesome. They're still kind of like awesome in my, they were like a Bill and Ted kind of pair, and they were making jokes, and they were pouring everyone's beer. And they started giving me, sips of beer in the red Solo cup. And I got trashed. I mean, I got really, really trashed. My mother was like, "Who got him drunk?" But that was really the first time that I remember drinking. I don't know if it, I don't think my uncles ever gave me any. I don't think at a family function anyone slipped me a little nip, and neither of my parents are big drinkers. So, although there is alcoholism in the family, but I think that was the first time.
Where'd you grow up?
Edison, New Jersey.
Okay, so kind of close to New York.
Yeah, not far out of New York, and then I left after high school for the Marines.
No, so how does your drinking progress? Like when you get, you're 10, so you're really young. Was it one of those times where you didn't drink again until you were 14, or?
So I think I was, yes, it was removed from my life, but only because of lifestyle and accessibility. And meaning like I just couldn't get my hands on it at that age. I didn't have any older friends. My sister was old enough that like the age gap was so great that probably, when she was drinking or going to those parties, she wasn't going to bring me along. So it was removed. But I wanted that, and I can still kind of, even while we're talking now, I can smell the Coors Light on my uncles. And I wanted that, and I thought that I discovered something that night for sure. And that makes sense in my story while we talk about it now. But I wasn't very popular. I also really didn't want to be very popular. I was a wise guy, made a lot of jokes, didn't make a lot of friends, and I had trouble at home and everything else. And then we moved from Edison to Highland Park, and the kids there had older brothers that were close enough in the age group that weekend drinking, became a thing, and the weekend parties became a thing. And the only reason I wanted to get invited to those parties is because that's where the booze was, and like scraping up my lunch money to buy a couple 40s on Saturday night.
Yeah.
And then the pot started. But even by the time I was 17, my friends were wake and baking. I was picking them up, and I'd actually started working when I was like 12. And
where'd you work?
I was picking them. I worked at I started working out working in an auto shop as a cleanup boy. And it was pretty cool because the guys were from that town, and all of like the Department of Public Works guys would come in after work, and the police department, the police officers would come in after work after their shift, or whoever it was, like all these town guys would come in and kind of crack a few beers open while these guys worked on cars. And I would hear about like their family lives and everything else. And, and I'm sure that like, and again, no one was feeding me drinks there. And in fact, my father was he was around, and I have a different perspective of him now than I did then. But he, these guys were really my male role models. And I thought that they were the coolest guys.
Yeah, it's sort of romantic. Like same as me when I was younger. I didn't have anything negative. Although looking back now, I know things were kind of screwed up at my house because my dad was an alcoholic. He was functional, but he was an alcoholic. I saw my dad with his relatives and with his brothers and sisters with his brother and sisters drinking, and that would seem like a lot of fun. You know, I didn't, and my brothers, like you said, dude, I must have, honestly, Brendan, that was the same kind of first time for me. Like my brother had a big party. I think my parents, you know, my brother Kevin was an outlaw. They probably went to 7-Eleven. And he had
I heard his music on one of the podcasts. Right?
Yeah. So he was rocking out then. He still is now. And he had a party, and people came, and I drank, and it was one of those things, like just like you, like there were a couple cool guys who I ended up hanging out with, and they gave me a couple beers, and it's I don't know if it's the alcoholic mind, but you really there's an attraction right away to it. You see all the good things around it. You really don't see the bad, or you don't acknowledge it.
There's no, I mean, I can't even, today I have right, they you know, people talk about experience and age and that. All I have today, I mean, I have experience because I've lived the life, but it's the perspective that I have today to be able to look at it and be like, oh, wow, there was a lot going on there that I didn't know was going on, you know? And so it's just being able to, and, you know, and be sober enough to have the perspective today too. But when people say, oh, it's the experience. I mean, you know, as a young adult, I had opinions that I still have today. It's just I didn't have the perspective to change my opinion or, you know, really back it up, where today I do.
You say you weren't that popular, and then you ended up moving, and you get to Highland Park, and you start to drink again, or you start to drink. Was that social anxiety removed?
No, I really just wanted to get to the alcohol. And so I've never had a problem being around other people. I just didn't really particularly have the desire to. I just wanted the booze. But by the time I was driving, I'd gotten 2 fake IDs. I looked like until I was like 22, I looked like I was 16.
Yeah.
I was like I guess I was like 5'9", and I found this little bar, this little dive bar, where my scam was that I had my own car, so I pulled in. It was a beat up car. It wasn't like, it didn't look like someone bought it for me. It looked like, I had this crappy car. It was a red Camaro, nice red 1985 Camaro. And I would pull in, and I would go in and sit at the bar and order a pint of Coors Light when I was like 17 and 18, a senior in high school. And I would, on my way out, I would grab 2 30-packs. And I would pay for them and stock up. I had this little, the apartment that we lived in, I had the upstairs, and I had this little refrigerator, and I'd stock up the refrigerator with as much beer as like I could, and I'd hide the front with other stuff, so like you couldn't really tell. But my mother never went into my room. She like respected my privacy. I smoked up there, smoked cigarettes, smoked pot, and I hid the other 30-pack in the closet. And that's what I wanted. That's all I wanted was that beer. So by the time I was picking people up in the morning, because I had the car, they would do the wake and bake thing, and I would drink a 6-pack before school my senior year.
So now we're off to the races.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the only thing that kind of saved me there was that so I was drinking a 6-pack before school. I was going home and hitting it on my lunch break, because I could walk home or, drive home and then drive back to school and finish out the day, and then go back home and drink or smoke or whatever. And then people started talking about college, and they called, I guess, the students down one at a time to talk about college, like what's next. And I never got a call down to the guidance office. And I recognized, though, that I was, alcoholics are smart. I mean, I didn't apply myself, but I don't, I'll sit there and acknowledge the fact that, I was like, oh boy, something's off, something's not right. And one day these 2 kids were talking about their college applications. I was like, what are you talking about? And they talked about, SATs and applications. And I was like, oh boy. And as I was walking through the school, I saw the Marine Corps recruiter. And I was like, that's it. That's the answer. Spontaneous, just like that. And I just walked right up to him and said, sign me up. But I was only 17. He abruptly stopped the conversation with the other kids he was talking to and basically threw me in this van and took me to the recruiting station.
He could tell you meant business, right?
He didn't know. He thought he was like, he was like showing me videos and everything else. I was like, listen, like, you don't have to sell it. I don't, whatever's coming on next, just sign me up. He was like, well, we got to get your parents' signature. They'll sign. Don't worry about it. It's my junior year. I was like, they will sign. Don't worry about it.
And you were living with your mom, and your parents were divorced?
Living with my mom, and signed up, and so then I was part of this like delayed entry program. No one knew like where that came from, and it was that spontaneous, which is probably another character defect. But it was just like, yeah, that's it. That's the answer.
Oh my gosh, that's wild, dude. Were people in your life like, whoa, like Brendan?
They really thought, they thought that I was going to go to New York and act.
Yeah. Did you by the way, did you do theater in high school? You did, right?
Did theater, yeah. That was I remember one of these teachers, an English teacher. She was a 7th grade English teacher, because the Highland Park high school. I won't give her name out just in case it ever comes back, so I'll respect that. But think about this. I was 12 when I did my first show. So 7th through 12th grade, Highland Park High School. I was 12, and this English teacher comes up to me, and she says after a show, and she says, "Wow, you really finally found something that you're good at." And I didn't say anything, surprisingly, and I just kind of enjoyed the rest of the moment. But I was a big troublemaker. I really was, but not when I was doing shows. I straightened up. I didn't drink on stage for a very long time. That would come later. Eventually, all the nevers would come true. But yeah. So I knew that I wasn't going to go to New York and act, because I really knew that New York would swallow me up. And I had that, that gut instinct, or it was in my heart that like I wanted to act, but I knew I didn't have the financial means. I didn't have any opportunities. Community college wasn't the answer. I didn't have grades to go anywhere. And so the military, and I didn't want to get stuck in town. So the military.
You had that ambition.
Yeah. I mean, at least, I always had the dream. When my sister performed, my sister was a straight A student. I look up to her so much. Even today, she's a mother of 2 beautiful kids. She's like pretty much part-time retired. She had a Wall Street financial career. And I look up to her a lot. And she did all the a cappella choir, theater. And my mom would have to take me to the shows because my father was a truck driver. Until he was in bed early, he had to be up at 3. And I just remember being like 8 years old at my sister's show. And my mom was like, you have to behave. Like, I have to bring you, but you have to behave. And I'm like, yeah, ma, sure. I'm like plotting what I can do. And I sat in that auditorium, and those curtains opened, and I immediately was like, I don't know what this is, but whatever this is, I want it to be the rest of my life. And, so I had that, and it was just a matter of getting there, and I took the long way, but, yeah.
But in the back of the mind, though, the plan still is, I want to be on stage. I want to act. But
yeah, I'm going to survive this. I'm going to grow up. I'm going to, become a Marine, and, 4 years out of town, and I'll come back to New York City and be a big star.
By the way, how's alcohol affecting like your relationships?
Yeah, so I my father. The big thing is that my father passed away going in between my junior year and my senior year, and I think that because of the personality, that I was, the personality that I had, and the person that I was, and the trouble that I caused, I think when the school got wind of that, they were like, brace yourselves, because whatever's about to show up for this last year is not going to be right.
Was it tragic? Was it like?
Yeah, he had a heart attack while he was driving, and but the amazing thing is that he drove me before that happened, 2 weeks before that happened, he drove me down to Philly to do the DEP program where they they put you through a medical test and you take several tests on the computer to test your mental capabilities and everything else to see what jobs you can essentially do and not do in the military. And so he drove me down, and he was a Marine, he was a Vietnam vet, and we had that time in the car together. It's like really the only great memory that I have of my time with my dad. And someone pointed that out, a couple years later. Someone said to me, a dear friend from high school said, at least God gave you that time together in that car to look back on, because if you didn't have that, they were like, I don't know if you would have pulled through. And, again, I had buddies and everything, but even now I don't talk to anyone from high school regularly. Occasionally, I mean, there's been now a 10-year and a 20-year reunion, and I love them all. I mean, I went to high school, we have that time together. But that wasn't a time in my life where I don't know, it's not important to me. It's not where
a lot of people look back on high school as the greatest time of their life. That was not the case for you.
Yeah, life did not. Boot camp was the best time of my life.
So take me to boot camp.
Absolutely. Life began in boot camp. I mean, alcohol was removed instantly, but there was enough going on every day that I didn't know. I'm sure I went through some sort of withdrawal. I couldn't tell you, because there was so much going on in boot camp that your head is spinning. And I excelled physically. I'm not saying I was a track star, but I was never in bad shape. And so I was excelling physically. I was excelling mentally. I was still, the big thing though, my character defects. I still had a mouth. I still disrespected authority. And I thought that the Marine Corps was going to break that. And that did not, and probably in many regards has not happened to this day.
What kind of consequences did you suffer in the military because of your mouth?
These guys, they have, if you're in the Marines, there's 2 weeks to the rifle range. So 1 week you do a lot of stretching, and you basically stare at a barrel with your rifle. Then it was the M16A2 service rifle, and you sit all bunched up and just stare at this barrel like that, crunched in this ball for hours. And then the next week is all the qualifying on the rifle range. And this guy, Staff Sergeant Washington, had a little book. I never knew what it was. And when he didn't have time to thrash you, he put a little tick mark next to your name in his book. And that was the time that you owed him. And when we got to the rifle range that first week, he said, Walsh, come with me. And these 3 drill instructors brought me out to the tree line. And they couldn't hit you then anymore, thankfully. But you could thrash yourself. And they're it was push-ups, do push-ups, and just push up. Now on your back, when you couldn't push anymore, it was on your back and doing flutter kicks and sit-ups. And then once you couldn't do that anymore, it was back to the front and do, push-ups again. And this went on for a really long time. And if you've ever seen Cool Hand Luke, when they break Paul Newman, I mean, if you want to romanticize it a little bit, I mean, that was the closest that I've ever, I was broken. I was for real. I was broken. They bring you right to the brink because you still need to be this Marine, but they bring you really to the brink, and they thought they did it. And then 2 weeks later, I was in trouble again. But,
what's happening physically and mentally in a state like that? Are you just hallucinating almost, or are you just about to, you think the lights are going to go off?
You're trying I guess part of it's age, part of it's, personality, but you really think that you could do enough push-ups that finally, I mean, they're just standing there. And you think that you can do enough push-ups where they'll be oh wow, you can really do a lot of, you can stop. you don't realize that this is going to continue until the smartest thing I could have done was done 3 push-ups and collapsed and fake cried and been that's it. Oh, you guys got me. But right? Like, again, like all this false pride and ego trying to do these push-ups. Like, I'll show you. I'll just keep
You're going to
pushing up.
die.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
Hi, I'm Hank. You might remember me from a show called King of the Hill. Check out a King of the Hill rewatch podcast. These boys ain't rap, but they are funny. Find the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts or at roguemedianetwork.com. I tell you what.
So
Really
what's
great.
so what's the drinking like? I mean, obviously, boot camp. You said the alcohol is removed,
Boot
but
camp's completely removed.
in
yeah.
your experience
And then,
in the Marines and the military, talk to me about the alcohol situations and how it affected you.
there's always someone in the military who misses home. And that wasn't me, right? Like, I was so glad to just be gone. I mean, no one was home. My mom was working 2 jobs. My father had passed away, but, I just was on my own a lot. So being in the Marines was great. Cause there's always someone around who, is fighting with their girlfriend back home or their wife back home, or there's a problem back home, or, they're homesick, or, whatever it is. So there's always someone who wants to have a case of beer. So, and what's crazy is that I've never had a job outside of the military where I was in restaurants primarily working, and I could do that wasted. And but like, I never, people who work on Wall Street and do big deals and were functioning alcoholics, I really don't know what that's like, except that in the military, I could, what happened is I could drink and then wake up the next morning at 5:30 in the morning and go run 9 miles, and then, put my camis on and do what I had to do for that day when we were in the rear, and then get off work and go to the gym and drink, and then finish that workout and continue to drink like all night until I passed out. And
just get up and do it again.
And then start that over and do it again. And so, I mean, there was a joke really where these guys, I had to go to Alabama in October.
By the way, were you unique? Like, were you different from the other guys? Like, were they like, hey, this guy, wow, Walsh is getting it in?
I definitely more consistently than anyone. And that's this story. And I really don't tell this. In fact, it made me look at myself a little differently. I had to go to Alabama for, my roommate in the Marines actually committed suicide last October, and we all went to Alabama. And it was unbelievable because no one was really traveling in the pandemic that time, and all the Marines that made their way over. I mean, that's really special. It's unfortunate that those were the circumstances, but these guys were telling a story about, I would run my mouth off, and these sergeants, and when I got to the fleet, would take me out to be like, they thought that they were going to run me into the ground, and this wasn't boot camp, so we would go out, they had to run with me, and they thought that drunk, they were going to take me hungover and whatever, but I was drunk like all the time. These guys, I would come back fine from like a 9-mile run, hungover, or like maybe I had a few beers still in me or whatever, and these guys were like out of breath and winded, and the guys were joking about it on this trip, but I was really thinking about that, and I was like, wow, maybe I owe a few more amends than I thought, and I really don't like, it's a shame. It's kind of a shame. I mean, it's still funny, but
it is funny. Well, it's funny because you're sober,
in
but
the right company.
It sucks. It sucks. I got a bunch of those. Where it
you
sucks.
Look back at the person you are now, and then someone brings that up, and you're like, that's how you're remembered. And I get that, like, there's the laugh about it pushing back against authority and everything, but those guys were just trying to do their job, and eventually I'd be in their shoes. So,
it's amazing, but that's part of the program we work too. Part of the 12-step program is to live with stuff like that, because there's a bunch of people, dude. While I like to live in the rainbow and unicorn universe where there's a ton of people in my life every day that I communicate with that have never seen me drunk or on drugs, but there's a bunch of people out there, It's not like they care enough to run around and tell stories about me, but if they bump into me again, that's their memory. It's like, oh, God, my gosh, the last time I saw this guy, he couldn't talk at a party in college, or he couldn't talk at a party in New York. And that's just kind of one of those things where, yeah, the acceptance part is huge, and I think I have, for the most part, accepted most of that, but it doesn't mean it doesn't suck from time to time.
Yeah, it was an eye opener. It was also just a check in on my sobriety and everything else, which is great. And I remember, I was lucky enough too that I was stationed in. I thought they were going to send me to the 9th ring of hell.
By the way,
really
the fucking
did.
Marines kick ass. The fact that all you guys got back together, that's pretty awesome. I mean, everybody going back.
They're a great group of guys. There's a couple of them that really keep us all still together. I try to, when that's happening, I try to touch base. I'm not the guy that is like the core guy that keeps everyone in touch, but there's a couple of guys that when they reach out or that, I definitely, I'm on board for whatever's going on. And I am glad that I went. I'm glad that I was sober, that I could go down there and be with that guy's family and his kids. And everything else I wouldn't have been able to do. I wouldn't have been able to afford to do it if I was drinking. So I can show up today. Yeah, it was great. And again, the Marines also, I didn't have to pay rent, right? I was staying at the barracks, so all my money went to drinking and partying. I was stationed, like I said, I thought they were going to send me, to Siberia. And but I think that in a way, because I was young and I pushed back a little. I do think that some of these older seasoned guys kind of, I don't want to say liked it, but maybe saw a little bit of themselves in me. And so they sent me to California. They sent me to San Diego, and I was in Mexico like every weekend. You're not supposed to go down there.
Yeah,
but it was awesome. And I was going across the border.
What year is this around?
This is 99. I got out to San Diego February 16th, my birthday, 1999, and I would return on my birthday in 2003.
So 4 years in San Diego.
Yeah.
And dude, that's a much different San Diego / Tijuana experience than it is today. I mean, you could go right, and I don't have personal experience, but I've heard a lot of stories. I mean, you can go right over the border, right? And just kind of
you just walk over, and then you just had to show your, in my military ID, you weren't really supposed to be down there, but you just had to show an ID to get back across, and they would ask you, your nationality, and the United States of America, and you just walk right across.
Did you ever get in any big trouble while you were in the Marines, in the military?
Yeah, I got the closest you could get to being court-martialed without being court-martialed for stealing gas. I had this, I had this military gas credit card that I wasn't supposed to have that was kind of passed down from degenerate to degenerate. And they're like, only use it at 3 a.m. And I ended up using it at like 12 in the afternoon on everyone's lunch break to go see my girlfriend, and who were still great friends. It's amazing she put up with everything that she put up with over the years. But we I got busted. I got busted down. I didn't actually lose my rank. I got suspended of a promotion for 6 months. But I would still get out as a corporal, so I was pretty proud about that. I would have made sergeant, but I got out as a corporal. So
you didn't have any big disasters around drinking.
So when we got back after 9/11, I went, instead of coming home, I went to a buddy's in Denver, and we got into a bar fight with a bunch of bouncers. And we thrashed these guys. We actually broke up a fight, and then all the bouncers came out, and it was kind of like it escalated, and we got into a big fight with these bouncers, and bouncers don't really like losing a fight. And so we got arrested for assault and battery. But it was right after 9/11. We just got back from the Middle East, and the judge said, I understand what's going on. Find a different way to blow off steam. And we had to up our court date and everything because they scheduled it whatever down the road. And we said, we got to get back to base. And, being a Marine got me out of a lot of trouble. I mean, I got into a lot of trouble, but even after, I still had my military ID, and the date is all backwards on it. So you couldn't really tell that it was expired unless you knew how to read a military ID. And I would just get into trouble when I got out of the military and whip out my military ID when I was home. And, I remember in Perth Amboy, there's like I ran into a statue
Drinking?
outside of the park. I was trashed and it was pouring. And I guess it's like, you're supposed to go around the circle. Like it forces you to make a right and go around the circle and then continue on the road. And I didn't see any of that. And I had like a car full of drunk people, and I was trashed, and I ran right into this. It was a monument, and backed up and just kept driving about a half mile down the road. The cops picked me up, and they put me in the back of the police car and drove me back to them. I showed my military ID, and they took me down to the monument, and there was no damage. They let me get back in my car and drive away.
It's almost like a little entitlement that comes with that, though. It's like, hey, like, here, let me show you this.
I wish someone had, and I mean, the world that we live in today too, right? I'm a 5'11" white guy. And, I understand that there is, like you said, I mean, unfortunately, there's some entitlements that came with that. And honestly, looking back, I mean, I wish that I had put, I wish that someone stopped. And in fact, I got a DWI. I don't know when it was. I should really have. I have 2 on the record, but I should have 3. But the first one I got, the judge, accidentally or not, wrote the suspension on the failure to keep to the right.
I remember you telling me the story.
Yeah. So I lost my license for 6 months for failure to keep to the right. And I decided that I was going to start going to church. And instead of going to the church, like the 9 churches in Jamesburg, sleeping on my mother's couch, I was driving without a license all the way up to like right next to where I drank, to this church that I went to when I was 5, as if though I had some spiritual connection to the place. And just like that story in the Big Book about the guy that goes over for like, he's like, I'm hungry. And he's like, I'll have some milk. And then he has the whiskey and the milk. And it was like, I was going to this church, and finally I was like, I'll go see the guys at the bar and have a burger. They got a great burger there. And I was drinking for a while, and I called my friend to come pick me up. And instead of just leaving, she and I drank there for 3 more hours. And then she was too drunk to drive, so I was driving home, and cops pulled me over without a license. And they said, how much have you had to drink? And I was like, about 9 hours worth. And and so I got, they took me to the police station. This is East Brunswick, and that would be my first DWI.
So take me forward now. Take me into the acting. Is there drinking involved with that? Because whenever I think of performing, right away I think of nerves. Did that become a natural part of the process, being an alcoholic and being in that profession? Or
no, what had happened first actually is I did think that my drinking would stop once I started to have a career in theater. I honestly believe that. And because of the military and some other, acts of fate, I ended up at a really good private conservatory in New York. And I was going to this wonderful studio, and I wouldn't drink. I wouldn't drink before class the first year. And then the summer happened, and I got a job offer to go up to Berkshire's, where there's some summer stock theater. And I thought that was it. I thought I was going to put down the bottle. And my drinking didn't stop. And, I was drinking over a 5th of Jim Beam a day, and over probably like a case of beer to a 30-pack. And one night at the dinner table, me and the director were sharing the house with the director the musical director and assistant musical director of another show. And because all these people put up the actors in their summer homes and everything. And we were at the dinner table, and my skin turned color. I had these big purple blotches suddenly on my body, and nothing like that ever happened before. It was basically alcohol poisoning. I mean, it was like my body was shutting down, and these musicals that like everyone's face just turned. I didn't see it, obviously, and they're like, "Something's wrong. You're going to go to the hospital." And they tried to take the bottle out of my hand, and I said, "Someone tries to take this bottle out of my hand again. Someone's going to the hospital. It's not me." And I don't want to get on cliches or, stereotypes, but I mean, you could imagine two musical theater people talking to a Marine under those. I got a reputation up there pretty quickly. And the next day, so I was 24, and the next day we were driving to the theater, and I was looking out the window, and I turned over to the director, and I said, I think I have a problem with alcohol. And he pulled over the car, and he started crying. I said, "What are you crying about? I'm the one with the problem. I'm the one with the drinking problem." He's like, "Oh my God." It's like, "Everyone's just been waiting for you to say something for so long. We'll get you help. We'll do whatever you have to do, whatever it is, whatever it takes. We'll find you help." Like, but, everyone with experience said that, you had to find your own way, because if we did it for you, it wouldn't stick, and all this other stuff. And, I had to hit my own bottom. And that's what happened.
And so that's when you had your first experience with recovery and sobriety?
A guy in the show who's a recognizable actor in the show. And this is crazy. Every show that I've ever done has had one sober person in it, at least. And this guy had some experience with it. I think at the time he had about 7 years sober. And he had heard about my situation. And he said, "What are you doing tonight? And we'll go to an AA meeting." And I was like, "You can't even buy milk up here after 7 o'clock. Where are we going to find a meeting?" And he said, "Trust me, we'll find meetings." And I had no idea about anything. And he did. He took me to this meeting, and I thought everyone was staring at me, because I was such a mess. And they were staring at him because they recognized me. That didn't dawn on me for 3 years. That didn't even cross my mind. And then the other thing is that it was a step meeting. It was a men's step meeting. And they're like, on step 1. And I was like, state, I'm in the right place. Step 1, what could else do? The stars are aligned out of the 12 steps. Today's step 1, we all start together. Like, I really felt that way. And it just turns out that I think more meetings should do this. I've been to, a few meetings now. And I think more step meetings, when someone is new in the room, they just went back to step 1.
Yeah, I've been in meetings like that too.
They don't get a lot of newcomers. Yeah. And then the next week they pick up, where they left off. But, if you're in the suburbs or whatever, New York, I understand it's a little different because there's like people in and out all the time. But if you're, if you're a newcomer, they just start at step 1. And I didn't even get that for years. Like, it didn't dawn on me until I happened to be at another meeting where they did that. And I thought about I was like, oh my God.
It's amazing how in sobriety, the fog slowly lifts. And you still have I still have these moments now where I'm like, wow, this
more
revelation.
will be revealed. It says it right in the book. More will be revealed.
So hold on. So I can't keep you forever. I need you for like 20 more minutes.
Yeah.
All right. Because this is awesome. And, I want to.
It's crazy to me, but because I never really get to go through it like this. But let's push on.
This first time in sobriety and recovery. Now, are you continuing? Two things. Are you acting and are you working a program the whole time?
I'm in the second year of school of a 2-year program.
The conservatory, for people who don't know, it's like for performing arts, right? For music, correct? It's like really, really high end.
It's for, this is for acting, but it's for,
Okay.
It's for, instead of a degree, a lot of the people that I was in school with had degrees from acting schools, and this is like the next step instead of a master's degree.
It's like a kick-ass opportunity for actors.
Yeah, it really was, and I happened to like stumble in with no real experience, and also primarily because of just my background, the military helped in that. But so I'm in the second year. I get home. I went to this meeting, and it was the last meeting of this place ever. Right? It was like the next week there was no meeting in this space. They were recommending other meetings. And my sponsor at that time, Chris Y, it was his first time at that meeting. He just moved to town. And I was like, I'm just back in town. I'm newly sober. And this guy started picking me up and driving to meetings. And we did start doing the work, but we opposite schedules, restaurants, trying to act, working full time, doing steps 1, 2, 3, start doing step 4, listening to the Joe and Charlie tape, going through the literature, speaking at meetings, and not getting past step 4. And then he moved, and I didn't get a new sponsor. I moved to be closer to New York because I was going to New York more often. And so I moved, and I had I could afford my own place now and everything. Gifts of the program. And I didn't like AA where in the new neighborhood, they weren't doing it right. So I stopped, I figured it out. I figured it all out. And, and I was young and I didn't know any better. So, now I have some experience. I figured everything out. I don't need to go to meetings. I got a lot of time back. Don't need a new sponsor. And was still working hard and not drinking and white knuckling it. And then the girl from California moved out to New York and started doing the show in New York. Met this other woman, started having problems at home because I wasn't coming home right away.
So the girl from San Diego moves and she's living with you, and now you meet this other woman that's in the show.
Got everything back. Got my license back. I got the same Jeep back that I destroyed. I put all this money into my Jeep. I got the Jeep back. Got the car back. Got a lot of things back. And what I will say is that what I've learned is let it go. You don't have to get. I don't need my old life back. I had to learn to let a lot of things go to fully embrace my new life.
Yeah.
But I didn't learn that. I didn't learn that until well into the second time. And I started drinking and restaurants and late nights and spent a lot of money. I'd never was late to work, started being late to work. And finally one day, I wanted to stop drinking and I couldn't.
Yeah, that's what happened to me, and that's really scary.
That was that, and that's what was really different too about the first time and the second time was in that bottom. The first time was such a gift, and I was just I mentioned it, and then everything lined up.
Yeah.
The second time, I was like, I'm gonna stop, and I couldn't, and it was weird. I would have a beer in my hand, and I would be like, I'm not going to drink this beer. I'm not going to drink this beer. As I slowly put it up to my mouth, I'm not going to drink it. And I would, and I was having the shakes and. I was about to ask
you, did you need the beer? Did you need it?
Oh yeah, 3 beers in the morning as soon as I got out of bed. In fact, the only thing that got me out of bed was drinking in the shower. I loved those 3 beers in the shower, and that would get me to the liquor store to get to the train. To go to work and have a few drinks and a shot before I got to work as a train schedule. So I had to cut a little bit before I had to be to work, and then I would drink at work and then do the same thing in reverse on the way back home and then hit this late night bar.
Are you acting? Are you working as an actor?
I was doing enough acting to hang in there.
What are you doing? Are you doing any shows or live shows or any TV or
No, I would occasionally do a commercial.
Okay.
I would occasionally get a call from my agent to do a commercial. I wasn't doing theater. And then, the last year I was like completely off the grid. I wasn't talking to my friends. I wasn't talking to my family. No one knew really where I was, even though I hadn't moved. And
that's it. That's all you need to that's it. That's a quote right there. No one knew where I was, even though I hadn't moved. You know, that is the alcoholic right there. That's where it gets us, dude.
So one night, seriously, I thought I was going to throw myself in front of the 6 train on 53rd and Lex. It was December, and it was December 13th, and I thought I could make it look like a slip, and my mom wouldn't be too. I mean, my mom wouldn't mind so much because it was an accident. She didn't even know I was drinking these last 5 years, I remember the 6 train coming, like seeing it, and I remember contemplating it in my head. And I don't know if it would have really happened or not. I mean, I like to, the alcoholic in me likes to pump up the story, but I might have chickened out. I don't know. But one thing that definitely happened is as it was, I think between the nerves and the adrenaline and the alcohol and everything, I blacked out. I totally blacked out. I woke up 30 minutes later on that train, and ended up way up in Harlem and knew someone up there. And I told her, I was like, I need to stay at your place. She's like, I have my kid tonight. I was like, you don't understand. Like, I really need, and you need to wake me up. I got to be at work the next morning. And I woke up the next morning and she wasn't there. And I was like, oh my God. Turns out it wasn't the next morning. It was like 10 o'clock the next night. And she had to go to work. And I was like, what happened? I told you to wake me up. And she was like, I was jumping on you. So I lost my job. I lost, everything. And I made it home 2 a.m. And I thought that I would have a beer because I started to shake, and I passed out for a little while, and I guess I was clawing at my legs, and that's just from alcohol. I was clawing at my legs, and I was in a lot of pain. It felt like my skin was on fire, and like my skeleton wanted to jump outside of my skin, like a Looney Tune cartoon. And I thought I would have a couple beers to stop the pain, and then call my family and be like, I don't know what to do, but I gotta go to detox or something. And the thought of having a couple beers, I was like, you are crazy. You've lost your mind. And I looked up the meetings, and I found the 7 a.m. And so I got on a 5:50 train to Hoboken, and got
fog lifters.
Yeah, fog lifters. It started out at fog lifters, and that's where it all kind of started. And I will say that.
Go ahead.
I should have gone. I mean, it was getting sober. How I got sober was not safe. I mean, there was the level of drinking that I did every day for 5 years to go through what I did was not safe, right? I could have, I could have died.
Could have died. Yeah, I mean, but I think it shows the vicious disease. It's that phenomenon of craving, right? Like the moment, like right now, I believe, this is what I believe, and I don't represent AA. I have a choice. I do not want to drink, and the alcohol. Mike P, my sponsor in Hoboken, said, it's not going to jump down my throat. He was talking about himself. But the moment I drink, all bets are off, dude. It could be 5 years. It could be the fact that you made it back and didn't die is a miracle.
It does keep me sober today. 100%. Like going through that does definitely keep me sober. But I do not, have the courage that I didn't have to go to rehab, whatever that is, because I, just for safety's sake, I don't endorse what I went through. And there's definitely a safer way to do it, but for me, it's what I had to go through.
Yeah, it's your story. So what? So then you show up, on 8th and Washington in Hoboken, and you're fog lifters at 7 a.m, and then you really did have a light coming off you. It felt like you looked like you were home. What was going on inside your mind, and how were you recovering?
Well, the first day I was a mess. I remember that, and I left fog lifters. I went to Starbucks, and I slept in a chair until the noon meeting. And then I went to the noon meeting, and I did that and then I went home and then came back for the night meeting. And the thing is that the next day I met Rory, and Rory had never been in AA before, and it was his first day. And he had that look of fear of anyone that's ever been in a meeting for the first time, just newly sober and coming in with whatever brought you in there. And I was like, oh, first day. And I was like, you and me are going to be best friends, pal. You don't know it yet, but you and me are going to be best friends. And I started, Joe Kid, and they call him Kid, or Kid Joe rather. They call him Kid because he was like, I don't know, he's like our age, but he looked like he was 70. And so they call him Kid Joe. And he introduced me to my sponsor, Alex, who's still my sponsor today. And I started talking to Alex for it was like December 17th. I started talking to Alex. And on Christmas Eve, I told Roy, I said, I think I'm going to ask Alex to be my sponsor. You can ask that guy to be your sponsor.
Yeah, Alex is a scary dude. Alex,
Alex looks, Alex is great. I mean, he looks scary, and I thought that's what I needed. I thought I needed a scary drill instructor in my life who was going to, choke me if I drank. And I was talking to him every day, and on Christmas Eve, or the 23rd, I didn't call him. And on the 24th, he saw me outside, and he said, Brendan, hey, what's going on? I said, hey, Alex, how you doing? He goes, what happened? You lose my number? And I said, I'm sorry. I got tied up a little bit. I really apologize. I wanted to ask you to be my sponsor. And, he almost dropped. We did steps 1, 2, 3 because he's a big believer in the steps. And he was like, look, we got to get together to do this fourth step. And I was like, I know our schedules. He's like, look, I understand, but if we're not going to do this, you got to find someone to do it with because this is the program. And I took a day off to do my fourth step. And then I took a day off to do my fifth step. And that has been a big difference.
Well, dude, that to me is you put it first. You put it before everything because the first time around you didn't get to that fourth step, which is taking that inventory, and then the fifth step, sharing it with what people would say, air quotes, deep dark secrets with somebody else.
The big thing too is step 3, and I think it's always turning it over, and I lose sight of that today. You talk about a higher power all the time, and I really, I don't shy away from a belief in a higher power with anyone these days. And a lot of people who are not in the program want, parts of the program in their life. And I think that's great. But, whatever is larger than me in this, universe, I also recognize that much more today than the first time around. And that has led to the ability to do the rest of the work in 4 or 5, 4 or 5 and all the way to 12. Is that, and I wish I was more spiritual. I wish I had more of a connection with my higher power. And often I find myself being like, what do you really want? And I ask those questions today. And it is just that conversation today, but that's what leads me to be able to do the other things, that the program asks or my sobriety requires, however it is. So.
How did your life start to take off? You've got Alex as a sponsor now. You're doing the steps. What starts to happen to you personally and professionally?
So I don't talk about this a whole lot, but we've been going on for an hour now, and it's the possibilities of the program. I mean, it's crazy to think that I was almost, expelled and flunked out of school, and that school was like, no one wants him in town if we expel him, and certainly no one wants him in this building for another year. So just do what he has to do to get, just pass him so the Marines take him away. And I don't know why I got the GI Bill in the military. I never thought I was college material, but I managed to go to community college the first time I was sober, and I went back to finish the 2 classes that I had to do, and I did. And it turns out that community college was linked to Columbia University. And so that was honestly, that's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life is going, in 2016, I went into Columbia and University and for dramatic studies, and it was like theory based. And, I told the guy, I was like, I showed him Sam, who, is an older guy. And I was like, look at this. I was like, Columbia's sending me stuff in the mail. Isn't that funny? And he was like, you should apply. I was like, it's Columbia University, And, I was acting again. I did a show right when I got sober. My phone rang. This guy asked me to do a play upstate, and I did. And I've been involved, since on all different levels. But then I took a break to go to Columbia, and I graduated Columbia with honors, which is kind of unbelievable. I thought that they just like took pity on me because I was older and were like giving me good grades. But it turns out that the university does not work like that. And now, and then I produced my own work and made some calls. I made those men. I didn't want anything. I called some people in the industry to say, look, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry I caused your show pain. I'm sorry I caused people in your show pain. And they were really, they received that very well. I started working again, and I lived in Tokyo doing West Side Story, and had another show lined up before the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit, and my phone rang. They were like, "Hey, we know you had a show lined up. What's going on?" I was like, "Well, hit the brakes like everything else." And this company had work, and now I'm working on the reopening of Broadway and producing, and my company that I work for fully supports me trying to act, and they're like, oh, you can't take him away yet, but if you want an actor, he's great. I've done some work on TV and that, so it's it's really all, and that's just my life, but those are the things that I wanted, and sometimes I think that that's what I wanted, and then I get it, and there's a lesson from my higher power in that too. Be careful what you think you want, but it's just that the possibilities, and this full well, that the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
If I'm sober,
Full heart,
if I have
clear
a
mind.
drink, yeah. If I have a drink, I mean, honestly, who knows? Things could be okay for a while. Eventually, it's going to be doomed. That's me. But if I'm drinking, there's a lot more like it's not looking so good. And also staying out of my own way. But if I'm practicing the program, I'm sober. I mean, I really do feel like I have no idea what's going to happen, in the most positive way. And it's pretty much it's pretty much all positive. There are hard days and everything, but nothing like that. I mean, nothing. And that's why people start stressing about things and trying to open a show or that. I'm like, you kidding? Like, we get to do this.
I got to go back. I got to go back with you. One of the main things was that you talked about Sam, and like you have this thing from Columbia, and it's like,
he said,
and he's like, hey, you got to do this.
Right. And I said, yeah. And I was like, you kidding me? And he goes, I said, I'm not going to get in. It's Columbia University. I don't even have high school grades. I was like, I don't have the SATs. I don't have anything. And he goes, just apply. He said, you're responsible for the effort, not the outcome. And that's like become my life mantra, not just about Columbia. That's like life. Responsible for the effort, not the outcome. Responsible to show up. Starts with higher power, then AA, then my family. I have a relationship with my sister today. It's unbelievable. My niece just started singing, and she's like got this crazy. She's 9, and she has this like soulful Linda Ronstadt Blue Bayou thing going on, and I'm like, she's singing Blue Skies, or I don't even know, Zippity Doo Dah. So I'm like, where does this like 9-year-old get this like Linda Ronstadt Zippity Doo Dah going on? She's amazing, and I'm glad I have that relationship today. Never would have happened. Never would have been able to be near those kids, but it's the effort today, and I make it. It used to be, who am I not going to show up for today? And now it's, I don't know, just waking up, being thankful, and seeing what happens.
The effort, not the outcome.
Yeah.
You've said it all. You said it all. Anything else you want to share?
No, I didn't expect to go on. I don't even know. I hope that worked.
Dude, it worked.
I hope I brought a good podcast.
You brought a good message, which is all that matters.
Yeah, it's cool. It was really great. I mean, I really am thankful that you asked. It's always cool to talk to you. So we could have
I feel like we need to do another one. I feel like we need to do another one. Anything else? Any like, anything you want to plug? Anything, if not, that's fine, but doesn't hurt.
No, I mean, I hate to say it because I think I'm so much cooler sometimes than I really am, or I don't want to be James Dean or Paul Newman, but really, like, the best thing that's happened in my life is like jumping on the Hallmark cards and corny sayings and corny flowings and just there's nothing wrong with like positivity. I got a magnet on my fridge that's the to the world you might be one person, but to one person you might be the world. But and it sounds corny because we're like, I'm a guy, I'm supposed to be a certain way or whatever. But I mean, that's the stuff that really gets me through it. Just being outside myself, and I don't know, I love other people as much as I struggle with it sometimes. Yeah, I'm a sensitive guy, but yeah, I don't know. I'm glad I'm sober today. I'm glad I'm sober. I'm glad I have a higher power in my life, and that's really it, man. I'm glad that you're my friend. I'm glad that you asked me to do this. So I'm very grateful.
The light keeps coming off you, Brendan. I appreciate it, dude. And this will go up on Thursday.
Oh boy, I'm not going to listen to it.
All right, well, I'll send it to you anyways.
Let me know if you get any hate mail.
Can you see? Do you mind sending me like a headshot or anything, or any shots of you, or do you want to keep that out of it?
I can send that to you. I got new ones.
All right, send me a headshot or something.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. And,
all right, brother.
I'll talk to you soon. It's really a pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening to the Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast. Foes and heroes. Gonna tell you about foes and heroes. Gonna tell you about.
Hey, I'm Zach.
And I'm Mike.
And we have a fantastic new podcast to tell you about. Bros, Foes, and Heroes. It's the two of us looking into the world of comics, breaking down some characters that you may have never heard of, and some that are just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, so Zach comes up with a character each time, and I go into it just completely blind. I don't know who this person is or what their abilities are or anything, and basically I guess we kind of go over their origin story and just some of the ridiculous stuff that maybe, especially Golden Age stuff.
Oh, Golden Age stuff is always the best, and we will make sure to highlight all of the shenanigans and just absolute weirdness of everything.
Yeah, that's right. So subscribe today and follow us on Instagram at Bros, Foes, Heroes.
And if you don't, I know where you live. Not really, but please subscribe.
Bros and foes and heroes. Gonna tell you about bros and foes and heroes. Gonna tell you about.
Hi, I'm Hank. You might remember me from a show called King of the Hill. Check out a King of the Hill rewatch podcast. These boys ain't rap, but they are funny. Find the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts or at roguemedianetwork.com. I tell you what.